Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of Unexpected Goals. This is your Premier League Match Week 32 preview. I'll be going through all 10 Premier League matches, breaking them down from a data and a tactical perspective. If you're listening to this in podcast form, I'd invite you to go over to my YouTube channel, where I've edited a video together, so you can see a lot of the visualizations that I mention in this episode. Please, if you can, subscribe to that YouTube channel. If you're listening to this podcast form on Spotify, if you could give me 5 stars, even if you want to say something horrible about me, I would greatly appreciate it. So let's just kick things off right away. 7:30 a.m. Eastern time. There's a lot of things going on in the Premier League right now. The title race may be over, relegation may be over, but European places are still very, very much alive. And let's focus on one of those teams to start things off here. Manchester City hosting Crystal Palace, 7:30 a.m. Eastern time in Manchester. Manchester City was pretty bad offensively against Manchester United. And it's very clear that they miss Holland. But there was one key aspect, and John McKenzie of The Athletic did a great breakdown of this. You should all be following my friend John on all his social platforms and listening to his podcasts and watching his YouTube videos. But in any case, what John broke down was is that Manchester City really wasn't making very many runs in behind against Manchester United, which is kind of odd, right? So Manchester United tends to sit in a 5-4-1 low block, and they like to deny space to the middle. And City, as the season has progressed here, as Nico Gonzalez has been inserted in the lineup, as their transition defense has gotten better, they've made more of those runs in behind because they're not as afraid of getting exposed in defensive transition. But for whatever reason, Pep just really didn't have his team making those types of runs behind. He went for a way more conservative approach because I guess he was kind of scared of United breaking on them. And, if you look at the shot map that I'm showing you right now, I mean, most of City's shots came from outside the box. And what tends to happen is, I mentioned this a lot, but if you are a team like Manchester City who holds a lot of possession and faces a lot of low blocks, you need to have a good aerial threat in the box when the things just break down and you need to be able to send in crosses. And obviously they've had that for a long time now with Erling Haaland, but now that he's injured, they don't really have an aerial threat. So you can kind of see the effects of that happening, especially against Manchester United, and that can happen here as well against Crystal Palace. Crystal Palace's defense has been incredible over the second half of the season. Since Boxing Day, only Arsenal has a better non-penalty expected goals allowed per 90 minutes than Crystal Palace. That's insane, right? It's because they can sit in that 5-3-2 low block. They can deny space to the middle, and they're very, very good at defending crosses. They're very good at denying space through the middle, and they make it very, very difficult uh, on teams like Manchester City if you want to try to break them down. If you go look at matches when they've played, Chelsea or some of these other great teams, like they have really been so good in that low defensive block. They've obviously got improved in terms of their as a pressing team, and I honestly wouldn't be surprised to see them come out in some aspects of the match and try to press City. But if they just sit back, I think they're going to be very effective at keeping City out here. One thing to look out for, obviously, Mark Gahey is suspended for this match. He's winning almost 60% of his aerial duels. He's one of the best aerial duel winners on Crystal Palace. So that is obviously a big loss for them. So, you know, but also City doesn't have Erling Haaland in the box. So it'll be interesting to see how City actually tries to break them down. I'm sure they'll try to go some type of midfield overload, but I don't think it's going to be that successful. Now, one aspect of this match uh, for City defensively is they've done a great job recently, honestly. I've said that metric since Boxing Day. Crystal Palace is allowing the second fewest non-penalty expected goals. City's actually fourth, right? Like we talk a lot about how horrible their defensive transition has been or how horrible their defensive numbers have been. They're still top five in the Premier League since Boxing Day in terms of non-penalty expected goals allowed. And the 4-4-2 mid block has actually done a very good job of not letting teams progress the ball through the middle. Now, we've seen teams been able to play the ball out wide. We've seen teams be able to play balls over the top and cause City some problems. And in the previous meeting, the image I'm showing you now, You know, when City plays that type of compact structure, it becomes very important for a team like Crystal Palace, who does who does build out in a 3-2-5 and does love to push their fullbacks high up the pitch. It allows them those spaces out wide to be able to play the ball. So the image I'm showing you here, Munez was able to find space out wide here against City's 4-4-2, and Will Hughes just played a ball right in behind him. Munez put it in the back of the net. And now sending in crosses to the box is a big thing for Crystal Palace in this match specifically. They haven't completed a high number of crosses into the box, but having both Mitchell and Munez in those wide areas, they're going to be free and they're going to have space to send in those crosses. City is 11th in crosses allowed into their penalty area. And in terms of cross completion percentage, they're dead last. So if you're looking for a route of how Crystal Palace is able to create chances in this match, it's out wide, utilizing their fullbacks, getting forward, and causing City a lot of problems that way. All right, let's move on to Brighton and Leicester. I would say, if the circumstances were different, I would say that this would actually be kind of a difficult matchup for Brighton. But the circumstances are that Leicester can no longer just sit in a low defensive block. Relegation is imminent and they have no other option. They have to be aggressive and they have to get 3 points from this match. So that's going to play right into what Brighton wants to do. We've been over this with Herzler's side many, many times, is that he wants to vacate the midfield. He wants to bait teams into pressing him so that he can get his forwards in 1v1 situations and just send direct balls up to them and have them go win 1v1 duels. Leicester is near the bottom in aerial duel win rate this season. And in the previous meeting, the second goal from Minta is a good example. I'm showing you the image right now on my YouTube channel at Unexpected Goals. Brighton's able to win the ball here in the middle of the pitch, and Minta is just 1v1 versus Christensen. And he's able to and as you can see from this image here, he just beats him 1v1 and puts the ball in the back of the net. And you see that a lot of times with Brighton throughout this season. And you know, I hate to say it, but it's kind of the way that football is going in some aspects, right? Not saying every team is going to play this way, but teams in the middle of the table, I think you're going to see them start playing more this style of play because for a team like Brighton who has pace with Minta and Matoma, and those two guys are incredible at bringing the ball down, like it would make sense to do that rather than trying to play through teams. So I think you're going to see a lot more teams play this type of direct style where they initially build out of the back and they push guys up and they try to get these 1v1s. I think that's kind of the way football is going in some aspects, rather than the Pep Guardiola extreme build up and that nature. Um, for Leicester City though, I mean I don't know what to say about their offense. I sent a tweet out on Monday after the Newcastle match. Um, Leicester has now only scored 4 goals over the course of their last 16 Premier League matches. They've been shut out in 10 of their last 11. They scored more goals against QPR in the FA Cup. They scored 6 goals on January 11th, and they have scored in the Premier League since December 14th. I mean, I don't know what to say. I have an example here, though, again, on my YouTube channel, an image of why I think that might be happening. So what Van Nistelrooy loves is he's a big believer in building through the wide areas and creating these type of overloads. So as you can see, Leicester's trying to create a passing triangle here, right? And because Brighton comes up with the press here, James Justin has 2 options. He can either try to play the ball here. I think that's Ndidi. I'm not sure if that's Ndidi or somebody else, but trying to play the ball back here centrally and have him play a bounce pass up to El Canus. Well, what he decides to do is he says, "Oh crap, that guy's getting pressed, and that's going to be a very risky pass, and we're probably going to lose that pass." So he tries to play it up here to El Canus. It gets blocked, and Brighton ends up taking, and I think ends up going out of bounds and things like that. But you see these type of build up structures from Leicester throughout most of the match, and El Canus is somebody who's really helped them with that type of build up, but they can't consistently play through teams that can press high like Brighton. Per Mark stats, Leicester is second to last in the Premier League in danger zone losses. They lose the ball constantly in their own final third trying to build out. They can't play direct because Jamie Vardy's not a target man that they can play to. So they're just stuck. Like there's really just no hope. They're just stuck, and there's really nowhere else to put it. So honestly, this should be a pretty routine Brighton win here at home. All right, next up, Nottingham Forest Everton. This is old school football. This is fun. This is, if you're somebody who just hates the way that, the way football is going now, watch this match. This is going to be, if you love just hard-nosed, physical duels, long balls, transitions, back when football was real, this is the match for you. Um, Everton struggled winning a high number of duels against Arsenal, and that's really what this match is going to come down to. They're Everton. I put the graphic up on my Premier League notes article on my Substack last week, but Everton is in the bottom five of the Premier League in terms of winning second balls, which is obviously a big problem against Nottingham Forest. Um, just on a side note, how Nottingham Forest is able to still be in the top three with some of these offensive numbers is kind of incredible. They obviously play a much different style of play, but when you're playing pretty direct, like you would hope that you would at least have a good long ball completion rate, right? They're dead last in the Premier League in that category. They're holding the least amount of possession, least amount of progressive passes and progressive carries. Like they're dead last in a lot of offensive metrics. They're just taking advantage of their counterattacking opportunities. They're being good on set pieces. They're crossing the ball effectively into the box. So, I mean, can this continue? I mean, for the remainder of the season, yeah, it could. Is it going to continue all the way into the next season? Are they going to be a consistent top four team going forward? No, is the simple answer to that question. Um, but they'll probably be playing Champions League football, which is crazy. Um, so what they have to do in this match specifically, though, is to actually beat Everton. Because Everton showed against Arsenal, Arsenal was trying to create box midfields and midfield overloads, and even wide overloads, and they were trying to isolate their, their wingers out there, and they just had no luck of doing anything. What Nottingham Forest has to do, get the ball in the wide areas and send in crosses. I know this sounds kind of crazy, but Everton is 14th in crosses completed into their penalty box, and I'm showing you the matrix right now. I know Nottingham Forest is near the bottom of the Premier League. That's just because they don't send in a lot of crosses because they don't have the ball a lot, and they don't have the ball in the final third, considering they have the fourth fewest final third touches of anybody this season. But despite Branthwaite and Tarkowski being huge, good aerial threats in the box, Everton's lost a lot of those aerial duels, and they've allowed teams to cross a lot of balls into the box. Right now, as the time I'm talking, Chris Wood is questionable. I have no idea whether he's going to play or not. Obviously, that's massive to to what Nottingham Forest is going to do here. So if he is available, then that's massive for them. Also, Everton hasn't been good at defending set pieces either, which is another big problem against Nottingham Forest. So, and Nottingham Forest took advantage of a couple of counterattacks in the previous meeting too. As for Everton, though, when they have the ball, they've shown abilities under David Moyes to build out of the back with more regularity. They've been using a lot of passing triangles, and it's looked more modern than what they were under Sean Dyche instead of just booting it long every single time. Against Arsenal, they played extremely direct because Arsenal kept pressing them, and they weren't really going to try to play through one of the best high pressing teams in the Premier League. But now they're going to be forced to break down a low block. In the previous meeting, Everton held 64% possession against Nottingham Forest. Sean Dyche's Everton. That is the most possession they have held all season long. They only ended up creating zero point 0.9 expected goals off of 13 shots. And one key loss for Everton in this match because they're more than likely going to build out. They've done some 4-2-4 and build outs, but they like to do a 3-2-5 so they can get five guys in the last line of defense against Nottingham Forest's back four. It looks like Mikalenko is going to miss this match. He's incredibly crucial to them because he is actually second on the team in progressive passes in the penalty area. I think he's also completed the most crosses of anybody on Everton into the penalty area. He is massive. Dwight McNeil coming back, helps obviously Everton a lot. He's been their best creator for most of the season. He's been missing. Ndai was back against Arsenal, which obviously helps Everton's offense as well. So Everton, man, if just Miguel could be available, this could be like a really, really formidable attack. But the Toffees are obviously in a situation where they have to break down a low block, which is not a situation they're in very often, and a situation that I don't think they're really ever going to be successful in. So It should be a very interesting match. Just whoever I can almost I'm not gonna say I guarantee it, but I'm gonna say whoever wins the most duels is going to win this match. All right, let's move on to already relegated Southampton against Aston Villa. Juric has left his post. Didn't work. Simon Rusk, who was the caretaker manager for the two matches uh, from the period of when Russell Martin got fired or sacked to when Juric was hired, had a 0-0 draw with Fulham and then lost 2-1 to Liverpool in the FA Cup. Not bad, honestly, comparatively to what Southampton has been doing for much of the season. And I'll be honest with you, my guess is going to be some of the same. I don't really know what you're going to see from Southampton because they've already relegated, right? Do they just say, all right, we'll continue building on the back? It's like, who cares if we turn the ball over? Like, maybe we prepare for how we're going to play in the championship next season. Or maybe they say, you know what, we're just going to send the ball along. We're just going to play old school football. I don't really know what they're going to do. What I do know is in the previous meeting that Villa pressed them high and they were very effective when they did. And Villa is forcing the least amount of dangers and losses of anybody this season. And, while the press was somewhat effective, Southampton did have 23 penalty box touches and 12 box entries in the previous meeting at Aston Villa, just no final third end product. And, they only ended up taking 4 shots and zero point 0.3 expected goals. So, I mean, I guess I would expect something similar. I don't, I don't know. It's tough to gauge an already relegated team, right? You can play free in some aspects because you literally have nothing to lose. So that could cause them to you know actually play maybe might actually allow them to play a little bit better. I don't know. But for Aston Villa, one thing that was kind of interesting about the previous meeting, we've been over with that Unai Emery loves, passing triangles. He loves building out of the back. He's a big believer in playing through teams rather than playing long. Well, Villa actually had a lot of success playing long against Southampton. And in fact, in the previous meeting at Villa, Southampton held over 50% possession. Uh, and a lot of some of Villa's actually their best chances came from playing direct. An image I'm showing to you right now on my YouTube channel. Southampton, as you can see, is pressing incredibly high, pressing more guys than they need to. Unai Emery is just, or excuse me, Unai Emery, Emi Martinez just says, "All right, well, I guess I'll just send the ball along." And because they press so many guys, Villa now has a 4v3 from that long ball. All Ollie Watkins has to do here is just win this aerial duel. And as you can see on the screen right now, Villa's got 3 guys just waiting to win the second ball. And they end up doing that and they end up creating a huge chance off of it. So Villa end up creating 2.3 expected goals in the previous meeting. Look for these type of situations, right? If Southampton's going to be super aggressive, maybe Villa has a lot more success going long. But in any case, even if they use their passing triangles to get the ball back centrally, or they drop Ollie Watkins in deep to play to him, they should have a lot of success in those. All right, let's move on. Arsenal and Brentford. Another case of Arsenal trying to break down a low block. If you haven't read them already, or you haven't watched the YouTube video, I did a tactical breakdown on my Substack of Everton versus Arsenal. So that's free. You can go check that out. I'll include the link of my Substack in the description below. And I have also done one of Arsenal and Real Madrid from Tuesday, which is available on my YouTube channel if you want to watch it in video format, or it's available on my Substack for free if you want to read it. So a lot of those concepts and maybe some images. Actually, I don't think I have an image from those matches, but in any case, you know, Arsenal successfully controlled the match against Real Madrid because Real Madrid's front two just weren't doing any defensive work. And against Everton, their front two were doing defensive work, and Arsenal was trying to overload the middle of the pitch, and they really just could not play through there. They found no luck of playing through that. That's more of the case I think you're going to see here against Brentford. The image I'm showing to you now, this is old school Brentford right here. The image I'm showing you now, this is from the previous meeting. I think it was in January, if I'm not mistaken. Uh, Brentford is playing like the most compact 4-4-2 low block that you'll ever see. And they played these type of low blocks against high quality competition. They did pressed Chelsea high and they pressed them actually pretty effectively on Sunday. But Arsenal is one of the best build-up teams in the world, as we saw against Real Madrid on Tuesday, and with all their fluid rotations and the way they're able to move guys around the pitch. Again, go read those two tactical analysis. I go into a little bit more depth on those fluid rotations against Everton, and then as well against Real Madrid. Um, but what there's two aspects that I want to show you from this image here. It's while this is great to play this compact and everything, I'm gonna flip. I'm gonna flip it here, and I'm gonna do the next image. How is Brentford breaking out of this? How if Brentford is able to win the ball in this image, how are they able to effectively break out of Arsenal? Look at Arsenal's rest defense that they have just all around Brentford's defensive block. You're not playing out through that. And it also highlights why Arsenal is so good defensively, especially in transition. Not only are they able to, from these type of situations, counter press and win the ball back within, 3 seconds. Well, if Brentford's able to break, there is no way that they have numerical advantages against Arsenal, and that is why Arsenal is allowing the fewest amount of expected goals from counterattacks this season, despite holding a ton of possession. And with teams actually able to try and counter on them, they can't create chances off them because Arsenal has this type of rest defense. Now, a lot of people use this as a criticism of Mikel Arteta because he takes a very low risk conservative approach with this type of rest defense. And as you can see, it kind of hinders Arsenal's ability to actually create chances in the box, right? They only have three guys in there among, what is that, like six or seven Brentford guys. Like they can't play through the middle. And, now they have Mikel Moreno, they have a little bit more of an aerial threat in the box. But these are the type of situations that go unnoticed by a lot of people and garner a lot of criticism. But this is also why Arsenal is one of the best defensive teams in the entire world. And it makes them so difficult to play against because defending these type of low blocks is exhausting. I don't care what anybody says. It's mentally and physically exhausting doing it for so long in the match. That's why Manchester City consistently will break teams down. But Brentford, if they're going to do this again, they're going to have a lot of trouble trying to break out of these type of situations. And even Everton, even if Brentford from build-up type situations, they've been better building out of the back, usually progressing the ball through wide areas. They'll usually drop Mbeumo or Wissa or even Kevin Schade deep, and they'll try to play bounce passes and try to play through teams that way. But pretty much every team that plays Arsenal just tries to play direct. And it never works because Arsenal is so good at winning aerial duels and second balls. So it's a very difficult matchup here for Brentford. And so you may see this match be very low event, which to Arsenal is fine. I mean, the title race is pretty much over. But and they obviously have a huge match coming up against Real Madrid next week or in the midweek. So interesting match, but one that Arsenal should control from start to finish. All right, let's move on to Sunday. Chelsea versus Ipswich. So Chelsea in the previous meeting created two expected goals, but they really only created one big chance. They ended up taking 20 shots. And as I'm showing to you on my YouTube channel right now from FBref, this is the list. This is the XG rating of all the shots they took against Ipswich. And as you can see, Nkunku had a big chance in the 21st minute. But look at all of these other chances. I mean, all of these, as you can see from the distances, they're all right and around or outside the 18-yard box. There's hardly any shots. I mean, they got one shot inside 10 yards. Like, holy moly. And this is the kind of stuff that happens with Chelsea. And it's something I want to highlight because, Ipswich, they played a compact 5-3-2 low block in that previous meeting. And what they did is they played very compact. Chelsea just kept trying to create an overload and trying to get, it would be a 5v4 or 6v5 in that middle zone 14 area. There's no space to play short passes through there. And so they just weren't able to do it. And I mentioned this last week, and I'll see if I can pull up, I'll put the image in here in my YouTube channel. But look at the aerial duel win rates of all of Chelsea's forwards. They don't got anybody above 50%. None of these guys are actually going up and winning aerial duels. So that what that means is, and with the image I'm about to show you now, this is from Sunday against Brentford. As you can see, they tried to overload and they get Pedro Neto isolated out wide. And so what happens is that as you can see here in the box, Brentford have a numerical advantage against Chelsea. They have a 5v4. So the only really thing that, and they don't have any aerial threats. So really the only thing NATO does is he just cuts inside on the left and he just shoots, and that shot has an XG rating of 0.05. If you want to know why Midweke is close to leading the Premier League, I don't know if he's leading. I don't know if he's still leading, but he was near the top of the Premier League in terms of shots per 90 because they just do this all the time and they just take these low quality chances over and over again. So if you want an answer of why Chelsea struggles against low defensive blocks, there's a couple examples for you. And it's going to continue over and over and over again until they get a target man. That's really what it comes down to. They need a target man that they can play in the box. I mean, I'm sure they have enough money to pay for one of them if they really want to, but that is what they need more than anything else. Same thing with Arsenal, but more or less for Chelsea, they just settle for all of these low quality chances because they don't have an aerial threat. It's the same story. It was going back to Pochettino last season, and it still hasn't fixed. 2 years now. We still haven't fixed this. All right. Now, Ipswich. Relegation is about certain, I would say, at this point. I mean, 12 points is it's way too much to make up from this at this point. They actually did a decent job building out against Wolves, but as the case for most of the season, the final third end product wasn't there. They barely weren't even able to create one expected goal against Wolves. They recently tried to build it out the back against Bournemouth because they were in a situation of who cares, like we're gonna get relegated. And as I'm showing you right now, this is from Mark Stats. 44 danger zone losses, 10 of them leading to a shot. Like, for context, an average Premier League team averages like 23, 24 danger zone losses forced per 90. Bournemouth just doubled that in essentially in one match, and they average maybe like two or three shots off of those danger zone losses, and Bournemouth just put up 10. So, not saying Chelsea's an elite pressing team because they're not, but their counter pressing in the previous meeting did hold Ipswich basically inside their final third for pretty much the entire match. 86.7% field tilt, 75.5% possession for Chelsea. And even with 25% of the ball, Ipswich still had 28 danger zone losses in that previous meeting. And that's just like the alarming thing for me that was happening early on in the season with Ipswich. It was like they were holding like something like 37% possession and they were just turning the ball over at just like the craziest high rate. So they're going down to the championship. Maybe Kieran McKenna's style works in the championship. Maybe he gets another job. I don't know. But they're basically just in this match, like they did in the previous one. They're going to have to take advantage of a couple counterattacks and hope that it works. All right, let's move on to Liverpool and West Ham. Liverpool actually struggled in build-up against Fulham. Fulham had 8 high turnovers. 3 of them led to shot. 1 of them led to a goal. Good news is they don't have to worry about that here against West Ham because they're playing incredibly passive under Graham Potter. For Liverpool, it's really going to come down to can they get in transition? West Ham this season is allowing the most expected goals from counterattacks. A lot of that was from the time that they were under Lopetegui, but with the image I'm showing you here, Bournemouth was able to do this quite a bit on Saturday. Just open them up right through the middle of the pitch. And as we know with West Ham, they have very little ball winning in the middle. So if you're able to do these type of situations, I mean, Liverpool can just carve them right up. Liverpool's the previous meeting against West Ham was probably one of the most dominant performances of the season. 5-0, 3.1 expected goals, and they did that by overloading the wide areas. I'm showing you the pass map from that match. You can see, look how bold that line is between Trent Alexander-Arnold and Mo Salah and Gravenberch as well. Between that, these three combining over there, and as you can see, a 4-man overload on the left side of the pitch. That is how they were going at and attacking West Ham, and they were doing it really effectively. So I would expect more of that from Liverpool. And for West Ham offensively, they're struggling to create chances right now. I know they scored twice against Bournemouth. They did not even create, they only created zero point 0.7 expected goals. Bournemouth ended up ended up having 29 danger zone losses, which, you know, for West Ham, who was trying to play a little bit more direct, that's a big problem because they're struggling against man-to-man presses. They struggled against Wolves recently as well. So, for Liverpool, that is a really good sign for them. Press West Ham high, come at them effectively, force them to play long. Yes, the Hammers do now have Fulkrug, they do now have Ferguson. At least they have some type of target man. But I don't think those guys are going to consistently win those type of duels against Virgil van Dijk and Konate. So, they made the mistake of trying to build it out of the back against Liverpool in the previous meeting, and they just kept turning it over. So maybe they'll make that same mistake again. But under Graham Potter, I mean, something's got to change because they're only averaging 1.02 expected goals per 90 minutes since he's been in charge. Something's got to change. They Maybe it's the addition of a target man. I don't know, but something's got to change. All right, Wolves and Tottenham. Wolves has completely turned their season around. No more relegation sweat. Well, almost no more relegation sweat. What's even crazier is over the past month, they've done this all without their best player, Matheus Cunha. Who's been suspended. So how did they do it? Well, they did it by attacking the wide areas. And I would say outside of Cunha, the most important player for Wolves is Ryan Aït-Nouri. He's second on the team from the left back position in terms of passes completed in the penalty area and progressive carries. And so for this, they utilized him very, very effectively against Everton, especially against Southampton, and even over the weekend against Ipswich. You saw Wolves attacking the half spaces with just extreme regularity. And they were asking a lot of questions of a lot of those teams. They were sending crosses to, Strand Larson and others into the box. But the way that Wolves play sets up really well here against Tottenham because we know Tottenham struggles defensively, defending in those wide areas, even defending in those type of half spaces. And Wolves is also going to continue to press 4 or 5 guys up on the last line of defense and play a lot of direct balls over the top when Tottenham is going to come at them and press them very aggressively. Matheus Cunha returning from suspension is huge for Wolves in this one. Not just because he's a great goal scorer. I mean, he's actually overperforming his XG by an insane amount this season. It's not really that. He is the one guy that drops deep in build up and really connects the play from the defense to the forwards. And, you know, Wolves is kind of similar in some aspects to Brighton. Like they like to play those direct balls over the top, especially into those wide areas and try to send crosses in the box. Strand Larson is a big presence in there. Um, but what Cunha can do and what he helps with is when you play those direct balls over the top to Ryan Aït-Nouri, for example, who's received a ton of progressive passes this season, when he drops in, that will typically drag a center back with him. So what that does is it really creates a ton of space for Jorgen Strand Larson to get in and get a 1v1 cross into the box from Ryan Aït-Nouri and give Wolves a great chance of scoring. That's why Strand Larson has over 10 goals this season, making those runs in behind, getting into the box, crashing it, and trying to get a lot of those type of crosses. But I think we need to give, while this is a good matchup for Wolves, I think we need to give credit to Tottenham. Defensively, they've been much better. It's funny how when you get your 2 best center backs available and healthy, how much better you are. Tottenham, their last 3 matches, has only conceded 3.3 expected goals. Excuse me, last 4 matches, they've only conceded 3.3 expected goals. It's like almost unheard of for like the middle of the season for Tottenham. Now, Tottenham has struggled for most of the season at breaking down low blocks. Main problem is they're trying to use a lot of these passing triangles out wide, fluid rotations, try and create space, try to play through teams in their defensive blocks. But passing is really the only way you can do it. This stat kind of shocked me. I knew Tottenham was struggling in terms like they don't have wingers that can really beat you 1v1. But successful take on percentage 38.9%. I'm showing the image right now from FBref. That's dead last in the Premier League. But What's even crazier is they've attempted the most take-ons of anybody, and they're the least efficient at it. That's a bit concerning, I would say. Um, they struggled to break down Wolves' low block in the previous meeting. Uh, Wolves played five at the back. Son missed a penalty, which inflated their final XG, which I'm showing you there. All of their shots now. They got two big shots towards the end of the match, but for a majority of the match, they really, really struggled. So you look at recently matches, Tottenham when they played Fulham, who plays low block, zero point 0.9 expected goals. Against Frankfurt in the Europa League on Thursday, 0.9 expected goals. Frankfurt sat back deep for a majority of that match as well, and they're not a good defensive team. So that's a bit concerning. So I would be a little concerned here for Tottenham, and actually, how seriously are they going to take this match, right? All their eggs in the Europa League basket. This match means nothing to them. They're not getting into Europe. They're not getting relegated. So it's like, who cares, right? You could see some squad rotation. I don't know. Maybe they put everything into that match on Thursday on next Thursday. We'll see. Newcastle and Manchester United. Um, what Manchester United cannot allow to happen in this match is allow Newcastle to break in transition. They did a great job against Manchester City on Sunday, and against Leon on Thursday. Before the final goal in stoppage time uh, by Ryan Cherky, which honestly was a mistake by Onana. Leon had only created one expected goal against City. City created under half an expected goal. And it comes down to Amorum's principles, defensive principles, when sitting in a low block. We've known this for United for quite some time under him. They've been so much better if they just sit back in their 5-4-1. I'm showing you an example of it right now against Leon. It can be very compact and it can be very, very difficult to play against. And this is the type of defensive structure you have to play against Newcastle because they're just too dangerous in transition. You just cannot allow Ishak any type of space. He's too good. He's the best striker on the planet right now. Now, what he's so good at, I'm showing you an image from the match against Wolves earlier this season. He's so good at drifting and finding this type of space out wide. A lot of strikers you don't teach this type of stuff, right? Because when you receive the ball out wide, if the center back is level with you, well, then you have to run at them and you have to run inside on them, right? They teach you to, play centrally so you can play behind them and you can get in behind them and score. But Ishak is such a good dribbler and he's so good at beating guys 1v1 that he drifts in these type of situations and he'll just dribble past people and cut inside or cut outside and score because he's that good. So that's what you really have to be careful of when you face Newcastle. Now, both goals came off of headers into the box. And actually, Newcastle had four shots inside the 6 yard box against United in the previous meeting. They all came in the first half, which is kind of surprising because United's actually, as I'm showing you right now, I'm showing you this matrix right now, they're actually fourth in the Premier League in crosses allowed into their penalty area. So kind of shocking in some aspects. Um, but, you know, stay in that low defensive block. Mark Ishak, try to keep him quiet, I think is, the best route for United out of possession. In possession, I got to be honest with you, I think it's a horrible matchup for United. Teams that can be physical and press them high effectively like Newcastle can, they just give United so many problems. It's I'm going to show you the matrix again here. Why don't I show it to you again? Yeah. Here's the matrix again. United 17th in danger zone losses. Just it just kind of highlights a Morum system and how ineffective it really is, and how the 3-4-3 buildup really is. Um, you know, Newcastle they forced a bunch of danger zone losses early on against United, and then once they went up 2-0, they kind of just sat back. But it could have been so much worse in that previous meeting. And the biggest problem for United in these type of situations is not that they're just turning the ball over in their own end of the pitch, but they just don't have a way to play direct, right? Hoyland's not a target man. He's not good in build up. He's not good at winning duels. United's not good at winning second balls. And so you just get kind of stuck, especially against really, really good pressing teams. Um, I'm showing you this from FB Ref previous meeting. After Newcastle went up 2-0, United didn't take their first shot until the 34th minute, and they created nothing. They actually ended up taking most of the shots for the rest of the match because Newcastle just sat back. But I hate to say it, but it's probably gonna be more of the same here for United. And honestly, they're in the same boat as Tottenham. Like this match doesn't mean anything. All the eggs are in the Europa League basket, you know. So I mean, it's good that United got Kobe Mainu back as well. That helps their midfield at least to with some ball winning and hopefully doesn't allow Newcastle to just rip right through the middle of them. All right. Final match Monday, fun one. Bournemouth, Fulham. Bournemouth is going through a bad run right now, but the underlying metrics are still incredibly positive. They have only picked up 2 points in their last six Premier League matches, but they have a plus 2.1 expected goal differential and 8.9 expected points during that time frame. They're due for a lot of positive regression. They created 2.1 expected goals against West Ham. West Ham only had zero point 0.7, so they really were unfortunate to not win that match. And you know, I've mentioned this before, but Bournemouth is actually one of the better teams at breaking down low blocks. And I think the reason for that, it's actually kind of simple. They're just they just make risky passes and dribbles and and they actually attack low blocks. You know, a lot of teams are scared. They're scared of the risk of losing the ball and getting hit on the counter. But Bournemouth is so good at counter pressing that they're just not worried about counterattacks. They would rather play the risky pass or try to take the risky dribble through an opponent, or you know maybe take that shot from the cut inside, or do what they do really well also, which is send in a lot of crosses by bombing Kirkes forward and sending in those crosses to the box. You know the problem with a lot of teams is they don't do what Bournemouth does, right? Teams like Arsenal, for example, or a team like Tottenham, like they just don't make those risky type passes and aren't that aggressive. And that's why Bournemouth is so good at breaking down low blocks. Now, in the previous meeting against Fulham, I mentioned crosses. That's a big part of Bournemouth's game. They only completed one cross into the penalty area. That's because Fulham's very good at defending them. And I'm showing you the matrix right now to show you some of Fulham's defensive numbers, which, they have dipped a little bit, in terms of their non-penalty XG, their box entries allowed, and their final third to box entry conversion rate. Things have kind of dipped a little bit over the last couple of matches, but they're still one of the better low block defending teams in the Premier League. I think the more interesting part of this matchup, though, is Fulham in possession. I've been over this many times about Fulham. They're a very one-dimensional team. They want to send in crosses to the box. That is what they do offensively. And it's really the only thing they do. And it's really the only way that they create chances. And, the second goal against Liverpool on Sunday was a good example of that. I'm showing you the image right now. Sessegnon is making a run here inside to draw Robertson with him. And as you can see from the bottom of the screen here, Pereira has a free run down the channel here to essentially send in a cross. And what happens is actually Fulham gets a 2v2 in the box. The ball gets bounced right to Sessegnon, and he just slots it in the back of the net. Another example here of the wide overloads I'm showing you to. They love to push Anthony Robinson far up the pitch. They love to create these, like I'm showing you right now, a five-man overload down the left side of the pitch here. They love to get down the left side. Anthony Robinson sending in, I think he's number one in the Premier League in terms of completed crosses into the penalty area. Just this is what they do, right? Now, what's fascinating about this is that is exactly what Bournemouth wants you to do, right? They want you to go to the wide areas because that's where they can suffocate you with their press. The image I'm showing you now from the previous meeting is a good example of that. They'll, as you can see from Even Nielsen here, they make these type of curved runs at the goalkeeper to force the ball to one side, and then he cuts off any passing lanes that go back to the other way. And as you can see from Iwobi in the middle of the pitch here, that is the space that Bournemouth will leave, and they'll bait you into making those passes. And their center backs are so good at jumping those balls and taking those balls away and allowing Bournemouth to create a ton of high turnovers, allowing them to create a lot of easy transition opportunities. And that's why Bournemouth is such a good pressing team. That's the reason why they're, They're going to probably force 30 plus danger zone losses in this match. All right, that does it for this episode of Unexpected Goals. Thank you all for listening to this. If you could do a couple things for me, if you could please go over to my YouTube channel and subscribe, that would greatly, greatly help me. If you could give me 5 stars for this podcast on Spotify, that would also greatly help me. If you could subscribe to my Substack, that would also greatly help me. Help me continue to do the stuff that I love for as long as I possibly can. Thank you all for listening. Enjoy the Premier League this weekend.